What if the coldest night of your life, a night when all hope seemed lost, brought you face to face with a billionaire stranger whose own silent sorrow mirrored your own? Could an unspoken connection, forged in a moment of shared despair, rewrite a destiny already etched in ice? This is a story of impossible encounters, hidden pain, and a love that dared to bloom in the most desolate of winters. Leave me alone. I have nothing left. Isabella Hayes's desperate cry was swallowed by the howling wind as she huddled on the frozen ground, tears freezing on her cheeks. The man in the expensive blue sweater, his face etched with a genuine, almost startling concern, moved closer, crouching down to her level. "I don't want to hurt you," he said, his voice a low, gentle murmur against the storm's fury. "I just can't leave you out here in this blizzard." The snow fell relentlessly on New York City, an impossible, almost apocalyptic phenomenon, blanketing the usually bustling streets in a silent, pristine white shroud that had paralyzed the entire metropolis. It was the first major snowfall in decades, and it had taken everyone by surprise. Everyone, except Isabella Hayes, for whom this brutal storm was just another crushing blow in the series of devastating disasters that had become her life. Her bare feet were numb, her thin cream-colored dress, a relic from a happier time, barely visible beneath the worn, threadbare green coat her grandmother had gifted her years ago, a coat that now offered little protection against the biting, relentless cold. Just a few short hours ago, her heartless landlord had callously changed the locks on her tiny, run-down apartment, tossing her few meager belongings onto the snowy sidewalk. Later, as she desperately tried to reach a friend's house, a fleeting hope in the overwhelming darkness, the taxi driver, sensing her vulnerability, her desperation, had cruelly sped off with her only suitcase, her last remaining possessions, her last shred of dignity. "You're going to freeze out here," the stranger insisted, his voice firm yet undeniably kind. "My name is Alexander Blackwood." Alexander. Something in his tone, a quiet authority mixed with an unexpected gentleness, made Isabella lift her gaze. Their eyes met, and for a fleeting, disorienting moment, she wondered if this man, this unexpected apparition in the midst of her despair, was real, or merely a cruel hallucination conjured by the biting cold and her own fractured mind. "Isabella?" she finally responded, her voice barely audible above the howling wind, a fragile whisper against the storm. "Isabella Hayes." Alexander extended his hand, his touch surprisingly warm against her frozen skin. "I have a car nearby. I can take you somewhere safe. At least for tonight." "No one can help me anymore," she murmured, hugging herself tightly, trying to conserve what little warmth remained in her numb body. "Everything I built, it's all gone. Everything." "You don't know that for sure," he responded, a small, almost imperceptible smile touching his lips, a flicker of warmth in his otherwise serious eyes. "Sometimes, Isabella, life has a strange, unexpected way of surprising us when we least expect it." A violent shiver racked Isabella's small frame, a stark, brutal reminder that she didn't have many options left. What more could she possibly lose? "Just for tonight," she finally conceded, her voice a hoarse whisper. Alexander helped her to her feet. Her legs trembled so violently she almost fell again, but he held her firmly, his grip surprisingly strong, reassuring. Without a word, he removed his own expensive, cashmere-lined overcoat and draped it gently over her shivering shoulders. "And you?" Isabella asked, surprised by his unexpected, selfless gesture. "Won't you be cold?" "I'm not the one barefoot in a snowstorm," he responded, a sad, almost wistful smile on his face. Alexander's car was parked just a few meters away, a sleek, black luxury sedan that seemed to materialize out of the swirling snow, a stark, almost jarring contrast to the abject poverty Isabella had become so brutally, so intimately acquainted with in recent months. As he opened the passenger door for her, she hesitated, a flicker of her old fear returning. "Where are you taking me?" "To the Blackwood Hotel. My family owns it," he explained, as he started the engine, the car's powerful heater instantly blasting warm, life-giving air into the frigid cabin. "I promise you, Isabella, you'll be safe there." The Blackwood Hotel? The name resonated in Isabella's mind. A distant, almost forgotten echo, stirring a memory she had tried so desperately, so long to bury. "The one downtown? Near the old concert hall?" Alexander nodded, expertly navigating the snow-covered, deserted streets. "Do you know it?" Isabella turned her gaze towards the window, watching the city, transformed into a surreal, dreamlike landscape under its thick blanket of white, blur past. "Only by name," she lied, her voice a carefully constructed monotone. 5 years ago, she had given the most important, most triumphant concert of her promising career in that very same hotel. Before the accident, before her world, her dreams, her very life had so tragically, so irrevocably changed. What do you think of this dramatic, almost fated encounter between Isabella and Alexander? Is he truly a benevolent stranger? Or does he have a hidden motive for his unexpected act of kindness? And what secrets from Isabella's past are connected to the Blackwood Hotel? Share your most insightful predictions and burning questions in the comments below. What if a grand, opulent hotel, a symbol of immense wealth and power, held not just the promise of a temporary refuge, but also the haunting ghost of a past you thought forever lost? Could a chance encounter with a forgotten melody, in the most unexpected of places, begin to unravel the carefully constructed walls around two lonely, guarded hearts? The journey to the Blackwood Hotel passed in a heavy, charged silence, broken only by the soft, rhythmic hum of the luxury sedan's powerful engine and the occasional, almost imperceptible directions Alexander Blackwood gave to the car's sophisticated navigation system. Isabella Rossi gazed out the window, watching the snow-transformed city of New York blur past, her mind a chaotic whirlwind of conflicting emotions, fear, gratitude, a gnawing uncertainty, and a strange, inexplicable flicker of something else entirely. At 28, Isabella, once considered the most brilliant, most promising classical pianist of her generation in all of America, now found herself with nothing, absolutely nothing, not even a decent pair of shoes to protect her from the biting, relentless cold. When they finally arrived at the hotel, Isabella gasped, her breath catching in her throat. The elegant, Art Deco building, a historic landmark, stood exactly as she remembered it from 5 long, agonizing years ago, its imposing facade a silent, poignant testament to a life, a dream, she thought forever lost. Alexander guided her through the opulent, marble-floored lobby, where several distinguished-looking guests, stranded by the unprecedented snowstorm, waited anxiously for news about the suspended public transportation. And then she saw it. In the center of the magnificent lobby, under a soft, strategically placed spotlight, stood the magnificent Steinway grand piano, its polished ebony surface gleaming, the very same piano where she had played her last complete, triumphant piece before the tragic accident. The accident that had permanently, irrevocably damaged the delicate nerves in her right hand, shattering her dreams, her career, her very identity. Her steps faltered, her breath catching in her throat, her body suddenly, inexplicably, frozen. Alexander noticed her abrupt change, the sudden pallor of her face, the raw, undisguised pain in her eyes. "Are you all right, Isabella?" he asked, his voice laced with a genuine, unexpected concern. Before she could respond, before she could even begin to articulate the overwhelming wave of grief and longing that threatened to consume her, an older man in an impeccably tailored suit, his expression one of practiced, professional deference, approached them. "Alexander, we were expecting you for the emergency meeting with the investors. Your father is..." The man, whom Alexander addressed as Martin, his father's longtime chief of staff, stopped mid-sentence, his gaze shifting with a barely concealed surprise to Isabella. "Martin, this is a special guest of mine," Alexander stated, his voice calm, authoritative. "I need a room for Miss Hayes. Immediately." Martin, though visibly disconcerted by this unexpected development, quickly, efficiently nodded. "Of course, Mr. Blackwood. Right away." While they waited at the polished reception desk, Isabella's gaze remained fixed, almost obsessively, on the silent, imposing piano. Her fingers, hidden within the oversized pockets of Alexander's borrowed cashmere coat, moved involuntarily, a ghostly echo of the intricate, passionate melodies they once so effortlessly, so beautifully, created. "Do you like music?" Alexander asked, his voice gentle, as he followed her intense, longing gaze. "I used to play," she whispered, her voice barely audible, thick with unshed tears. "A long, long time ago. That piano has a special history, you know?" Alexander commented, his own voice tinged with a surprising, almost wistful nostalgia. "My mother used to say she once heard a pianist play there, a young woman, whose music, whose melody, she could never, ever forget. We searched for her for years, after my mother passed, but we never found out who she was. It was as if she had simply vanished." Isabella's heart skipped a beat, a sudden, painful jolt of recognition. She remembered that night perfectly. An elegant, kind-faced woman had approached her after her concert, requesting a special piece, an original composition Isabella had never played in public before, a melody born from the deepest, most vulnerable corners of her own heart. "Here you are, Miss Hayes." Martin returned with an electronic key card, his expression carefully neutral. "Suite 512, one of our finest rooms, overlooking the park." "It's too much," Isabella protested, her voice a hoarse whisper. "Not for a guest of mine," Alexander insisted, his gaze unwavering. As they ascended in the silent, mirrored elevator, Isabella wondered with a growing, almost terrifying certainty, if this chance encounter, this accidental meeting, was truly a coincidence, or if destiny, in its own mysterious, often cruel way, was offering her a second, unexpected, and perhaps even more painful chance. What she didn't yet know, couldn't possibly know, was that this single, snow-swept night, this shared, fragile solitude, was merely the haunting, poignant prelude to something far bigger, far more transformative, than either of them could have ever, in their wildest dreams, imagined. What if a temporary refuge, offered out of unexpected kindness, began to feel dangerously like a new beginning? Could a woman, stripped of everything, dare to hope again? Even as the enigmatic billionaire who saved her wrestled with his own hidden demons and the weight of a past he couldn't escape? The next morning, Isabella Hayes awoke, disoriented, in the opulent luxury of Suite 512 at the Blackwood Hotel. For a fleeting, blissful moment, she thought everything, the snowstorm, the eviction, the desperate, freezing night on the streets, had all been a terrible, vivid nightmare, until she saw her worn, green coat, a stark, jarring reality, draped over an elegant Louis XVI armchair, her own still damp, tattered boots standing forlornly beside it. Her feet, she noticed with a pang, still bore the faint, reddish marks of the previous night's biting cold. A soft, hesitant knock on the door startled her. "Miss Hayes? I've brought you some clothes and breakfast," a young, friendly female voice called out from the other side. As Isabella opened the door, she was greeted by a smiling young woman in a crisp hotel uniform. "I'm Carmen Torres, Mr. Blackwood's executive assistant. He asked me to bring you this." On the silver room service cart, there wasn't just a lavish, gourmet breakfast, but also a selection of new, expensive-looking clothes, soft jeans, cashmere sweaters, comfortable yet stylish boots, and even, to Isabella's surprise, a set of delicate, lace-trimmed undergarments, their tags still attached. I can't possibly accept all this," Isabella protested, her voice a hoarse whisper, overwhelmed by the sheer, unexpected generosity. "Mr. Blackwood was very clear, Miss Hayes," Carmen insisted, her smile unwavering. "He also asked me to inform you that he'll be waiting for you in his office when you're ready." 40 minutes later, Isabella, dressed in one of the new, surprisingly comfortable outfits, descended to the reception area. She felt strange, almost like an imposter, in these fine, unfamiliar clothes, a stark contrast to her usual worn, practical attire. "Ah, you must be Alexander's latest charitable endeavor." A cool, condescending female voice drawled from behind her. Isabella turned to find herself face to face with an elegant, impeccably dressed woman in her early 30s. Her blonde hair coiffed to perfection. Her eyes, a chilling shade of icy blue, raking over Isabella with a dismissive, almost contemptuous air. "I'm Elena Fuentes, director of the hotel." The woman introduced herself, extending a perfectly manicured hand, her grip surprisingly strong, almost predatory. "And you are?" "Isabella Hayes," Isabella responded, her voice quiet but firm, as she briefly shook Elena's offered hand. "Well, Isabella?" Elena continued, her smile not quite reaching her cold, assessing eyes. "Whatever your sad little story may be, I highly recommend you don't get too accustomed to all this." She gestured vaguely to the opulent surroundings. "Alexander has a notoriously big heart, especially for strays. But his father?" She paused, a subtle, almost imperceptible threat in her voice. "Does not share that particular defect." Before Isabella could respond, before she could even begin to process the implications of Elena's chilling words, Carmen appeared, rescuing her from the uncomfortable, almost hostile encounter. "Miss Hayes, I'll take you to Mr. Blackwood's office now." As they walked, Carmen whispered, her voice low, conspiratorial. "Don't pay any attention to Elena. She's been desperately in love with Alexander since university, but he's never seen her as anything more than a friend, a colleague. She's possessive." Alexander's office was on the top floor, its panoramic windows offering a breathtaking, almost dizzying view of New York City, still blanketed in a pristine, almost surreal layer of white snow. When they entered, he was staring out the window, his back to them. So engrossed in his thoughts, he didn't seem to notice their presence until Carmen gently cleared her throat. "Isabella, did you sleep well?" he asked, turning, his voice surprisingly warm, a stark contrast to the previous night's formal detachment. "Better than I have in months, Mr. Blackwood," she admitted, a faint blush rising on her cheeks. "Thank you for the clothes, but it's really too much. I don't know how I can ever repay you." Alexander smiled, a genuine, unforced expression that reached his usually guarded eyes. "Actually," he said, his voice thoughtful, "I wanted to talk to you about that. We have a vacancy in reception. It's not a permanent position, just temporary, while Sophia, our usual lead, is on maternity leave. 3 months, perhaps 4. He paused, his gaze direct, unwavering. Are you offering me a job, Mr. Blackwood?" "We need help, Isabella. And you," he gestured vaguely to her, "clearly need employment. It seems like a fair, mutually beneficial arrangement, don't you think?" Isabella hesitated, her mind racing. It was an incredible opportunity, a lifeline she desperately needed. Yet, a small, persistent voice of caution whispered in her ear. "Alexander," she began, her voice barely a whisper. I don't even know you. Why are you doing all this for me?" His expression shifted, a shadow passing over his usually composed features. "Years ago," he said, his voice low, almost a confession, "my younger sister died in a tragic accident, a hit and run. No one stopped to help her. She died alone, on a cold, deserted street." He paused, his gaze distant, lost in a painful memory. "I suppose," he continued, his voice barely audible, "ever since then I simply can't ignore someone who needs help. Someone who is alone." The raw, unvarnished sincerity in his voice, the profound, unexpected vulnerability in his eyes, touched something deep within Isabella, silencing her doubts, her fears. Perhaps, just perhaps, this enigmatic, powerful billionaire wasn't just offering her a job. Perhaps, in his own guarded, unconventional way, he was offering her something far more precious, far more human. A chance. A new beginning. "I accept the job, Mr. Blackwood," she said, her voice surprisingly firm, a newfound resolve in her eyes. "What if the sanctuary you found was also a stage for subtle power plays, where a rival's jealous gaze followed your every move, and the haunting echo of an unfinished melody became a constant, poignant reminder of a past you couldn't escape, a future you didn't dare to dream of. Could a fragile new beginning withstand the weight of unspoken secrets and hidden resentments? The following weeks unfolded in a dizzying, almost surreal routine that Isabella Hayes hadn't experienced in years. Working at the Blackwood Hotel's reception desk proved to be far more challenging than she had initially anticipated. Memorizing intricate procedures, learning to navigate the complex reservation system, and, perhaps most difficult of all, enduring the constant, hawk-like vigilance of Elena Fuentes, who seemed to relish every opportunity to point out Isabella's inevitable minor mistakes. At night, when the opulent, marble-floored lobby finally emptied, when the last distinguished guest had retired to their luxurious suite, Isabella found herself irresistibly drawn to the magnificent Steinway grand piano. She never dared to truly play, not with anyone present, but in the profound, enveloping solitude of the late-night hours. She would allow her fingers, hesitant at first, then with a growing, familiar confidence, to gently, almost reverently, caress the cool ivory keys. Her left hand, miraculously, still retained its old magic, its innate grace, while her right, a constant, painful reminder of her shattered dreams, could barely manage to press a few, hesitant, discordant notes. What she didn't know, couldn't possibly know, was that Alexander Blackwood, from the discreet, almost invisible security cameras in his top-floor office, often watched her. His gaze captivated, almost mesmerized, by the profound, heartbreaking melancholy of those incomplete, yet strangely beautiful melodies. One night, Alexander, unable to resist the pull any longer, surprised her, a silent, unexpected presence in the dimly lit lobby. "I'm so sorry," Isabella exclaimed, jumping up from the piano bench, her face flushing a deep crimson. I shouldn't have touched it without permission." "Please," he requested, his voice a low, gentle murmur as he approached her. "Don't stop. You play beautifully." "I used to play better," she whispered, instinctively hiding her injured right hand, a familiar wave of shame washing over her. Alexander noticed the subtle yet significant gesture. "What happened to your hand, Isabella?" She remained silent for a long moment, the weight of her past, her loss, a heavy, suffocating presence between them. "An accident," she finally said, her voice barely audible. 5 years ago, I was at my peak as a concert pianist when a drunk driver ran a red light. The impact, it permanently damaged the nerves in my right hand." "A professional pianist?" Alexander's surprise was genuine. His gaze filled with a newfound respect. "Classical?" Isabella nodded, a single tear escaping and tracing a silent path down her cheek. "I studied at the Juilliard School when it happened. Afterwards, there was no point in continuing. My dream, my life, it was over." Alexander gently, almost reverently, took her injured hand in his touch surprisingly warm, comforting. "Does it still hurt?" "Sometimes," she admitted, her voice a fragile whisper. "The doctors said I'd never regain full mobility." "But you still play," he observed, his gaze searching hers. "I can't help it," she confessed, a sad, wistful smile touching her lips. It was my life." That night, they ascended to the hotel's rooftop terrace, a hidden sanctuary overlooking the glittering, snow-covered expanse of New York City. Under a breathtaking canopy of stars, Alexander, to Isabella's utter astonishment, confessed his own hidden passion, photography. He showed her some of his work on his sleek, expensive smartphone, anonymous, yet deeply evocative faces, fleeting, everyday moments captured with a surprising, almost poignant sensitivity that resonated deeply with Isabella. "Why don't you dedicate yourself to this, Alexander?" she asked, genuinely impressed. "You have a true gift." "My father expects me to manage the family empire," he replied, his voice tinged with a familiar weariness. "Blackwoods build, Alexander, they don't just take pictures," he always says. "He doesn't understand that I prefer to capture the beauty that already exists in the world, rather than just erecting more cold, impersonal buildings. It's sad that we can't always be who we truly want to be, Isabella murmured. Her own unspoken dreams, her own lost future, a heavy ache in her heart. Perhaps it's not too late, Isabella? Alexander responded gently, almost imperceptibly, squeezing her hand. For either of us. Meanwhile, in her own opulent office, a few floors below, Elena Fuentes meticulously reviewed the security footage of Isabella playing the piano in the deserted lobby. There was something undeniably, almost disturbingly familiar about that woman, about the way she played, even with her injured hand. She opened her laptop and began to search, her fingers flying across the keyboard, a cold, calculating glint in her icy blue eyes. And what she discovered, in the dusty, forgotten archives of the internet, left her breathless, a triumphant, predatory smile slowly spreading across her perfectly painted lips. Isabella Hayes, she typed into the search bar. And there it was. Articles, reviews, photographs of a young, brilliant pianist, a rising star whose promising career had been tragically, abruptly cut short by a devastating accident. So, Elena murmured to herself, a chilling satisfaction in her voice as she saved the information for the opportune moment. We have a fallen celebrity, a forgotten prodigy, amongst us. How extraordinarily interesting. What Elena didn't yet know, couldn't possibly comprehend, was that this damning information, this hidden truth, connected Isabella directly, inextricably, to the Blackwood family, to Alexander's own past, in ways no one, not even Alexander himself, could have ever, in their wildest dreams, imagined. What if the ghost of a forgotten melody held the key to a devastating family secret, a truth so profound it could shatter empires and rewrite destinies? And what if a jealous rival, armed with this explosive knowledge, decided to play a dangerous, high-stakes game, with your fragile new love as the unsuspecting pawn? The early morning light illuminated Elena Fuentes' sharp, calculating features as she meticulously reviewed, for the third time, the articles about Isabella Hayes' once brilliant, now tragically curtailed piano career. One photograph, in particular, captured her attention. Isabella, radiant and youthful, receiving a prestigious award in Vienna, 5 long years ago. In the next, she appeared in a striking black gown, seated before a magnificent Steinway grand piano, during a high-profile charity concert at the Blackwood Hotel. I knew it! Elena exclaimed, a triumphant, almost predatory glint in her icy blue eyes as she enlarged the image. The photograph showed a younger, more vibrant Isabella, bowing gracefully before an appreciative audience after her breathtaking performance. Among the distinguished, elegantly dressed attendees in the front row, Elena instantly recognized Margarita Blackwood, Alexander's late mother, her face alight with a profound, almost reverent admiration. So you're the one? Elena murmured to herself, a slow, chilling smile spreading across her perfectly painted lips as she printed the damning page. Meanwhile, Isabella was beginning her shift at the reception desk. After 3 challenging weeks working there, she had finally begun to master the intricate routines, to navigate the complex social dynamics of the opulent hotel, to even, occasionally, feel a fragile sense of belonging. Her life was slowly, painstakingly, finding a new, unexpected rhythm. Good morning, Isabella? Alexander Blackwood greeted her, stopping by the polished reception counter, his presence a familiar, comforting warmth in the otherwise impersonal grandeur of the hotel lobby. How was your night? Quiet, Mr. Blackwood, she responded, a shy, almost imperceptible smile touching her lips as she remembered their late-night conversation on the rooftop terrace, the shared dreams, the unspoken promises. Alexander leaned closer, his voice a low, intimate murmur. My father is hosting a dinner tonight with some important investors. I hate these formal gatherings, but it would be far less tedious if you would accompany me. Me, Mr. Blackwood? Isabella stammered, her heart skipping a beat. But I'm just an employee. You're my guest, he insisted, his gaze intense, unwavering. Besides, he added, a playful glint in his eyes, I have something I want to show you afterwards. Something special. Before she could respond, before she could even begin to process his unexpected, almost reckless invitation. The main hotel doors swung open, and a tall, imposing figure strode in. His firm, confident steps and severe, assessing gaze immediately caused several nearby employees to tense, their polite smiles faltering. "Alexander, I need to speak with you," the man stated, his voice authoritative, commanding. "Who is this young woman?" "Father," Alexander said, his own voice suddenly a little strained. "This is Isabella Hayes, our new receptionist." "Isabella, this is Richard Blackwood, my father." Richard Blackwood, the formidable patriarch of the Blackwood Empire, examined Isabella with a cold, piercing gaze that made her shiver despite herself. "My son has a notorious weakness for lost causes, Miss Hayes," he said, his voice dripping with a subtle, almost imperceptible disdain. "I trust his compassion will not prove to be a costly error in judgment for either of you." Without waiting for a response, without even a perfunctory nod, he gestured for Alexander to follow him, leaving Isabella standing alone by the reception desk, her heart pounding, a chilling premonition settling deep within her. Before disappearing into his private elevator, Alexander shot her a quick, almost apologetic glance, his eyes filled with an unspoken, yet undeniable reassurance. "Don't listen to him," he whispered, his voice a low, urgent murmur as he passed her. "I'll see you tonight." Hours later, Isabella was in her small, modest hotel room, preparing for the intimidating dinner, when there was a soft knock on her door. It was Carmen Torres, Alexander's executive assistant, holding a beautiful midnight blue evening gown in her hands. "Alexander thought you might need this for the dinner tonight," Carmen explained, her smile warm, genuine. The dress was elegant but understated, perfectly suited for the formal occasion. As she dressed, Isabella couldn't help but feel a strange, almost surreal sense that she was stepping back into a world she thought she had lost forever. A world of music, of art, of breathtaking beauty. The dinner took place in one of the hotel's exclusive private dining rooms. Richard Blackwood dominated the conversation, discussing ambitious expansion plans and new, high-stakes projects with the powerful investors. Alexander, seated beside Isabella, participated very little, his attention, she noticed with a growing, unsettling awareness, often drifting towards her. His gaze filled with an intensity that made her blush. "And why don't you tell us about your own interests, Miss Hayes?" One of the investors, a shrewd older man with kind eyes, suddenly asked, breaking the established protocol, his gaze curious. All eyes in the room turned towards her. Isabella hesitated, her mind racing. "I'm interested in music, the piano specifically." "An aficionado?" another investor inquired, his tone polite but dismissive. Before she could respond, Elena Fuentes' sharp, melodious voice resonated from the entrance of the private dining room. "Good heavens! Are you all dining with the legendary Isabella Hayes and you don't even know it?" she exclaimed, approaching their table with a thick, ominous-looking folder clutched in her hand, a triumphant, predatory smile on her lips. The child prodigy who won the prestigious Vienna International Piano Competition at the tender age of 23, the brilliant pianist who captivated Margarita Blackwood herself at that unforgettable charity concert. Right here, in this very hotel. Silence, heavy and absolute, fell over the table. Alexander stared at Isabella, his face a mask of stunned disbelief, his eyes wide with a dawning, horrified comprehension. "Is this true, Isabella?" he asked, his voice barely a whisper. Elena Fuentes opened the folder and began to distribute glossy prints of her research to the astonished investors, to Richard Blackwood, to Alexander himself. "Here she is," Elena announced, her voice dripping with a venomous sweetness. "Playing in this very hotel, 5 long years ago. A month later, a tragic car accident supposedly ruined her career. She disappeared from the music world completely." Elena paused, her gaze fixed on Isabella, a chilling, triumphant smile on her lips. "And now she reappears. How? As a destitute woman, rescued by the compassionate, unsuspecting Blackwood heir? Isn't that just a little too coincidental, wouldn't you say?" What if the cruel unmasking of a hidden past, instead of shattering a fragile connection, unexpectedly forged an even deeper, more unbreakable bond? Could a man, faced with a devastating family secret, choose love over legacy, compassion over condemnation, and in doing so, rewrite not just his own destiny, but the very definition of his family's name? Enough, Elena! Alexander Blackwood's voice, cold as ice, sharp as a honed blade, cut through the stunned, suffocating silence of the private dining room. But Richard Blackwood, Alexander's formidable father, who had remained silent throughout Elena Fuentes's venomous tirade, his expression unreadable, suddenly showed a flicker of intense, almost painful interest. Are you truly the pianist who played for my wife, Margarita, all those years ago, Miss Hayes? He asked, his voice surprisingly gentle, his gaze fixed on Isabella Hayes, who stood pale and trembling, her carefully constructed composure shattered. Isabella nodded, tears welling in her eyes, her face burning with a mixture of shame and a profound, aching grief. Yes, sir. I played a special piece at Mrs. Blackwood's request. An original composition of mine. I never imagined it would mean so much to her. My wife, Richard Blackwood said, his voice now thick with a raw, unexpected emotion, spoke of that melody, of your melody, until the very day she died. She said, he paused, his gaze distant, lost in a cherished memory. It had the power to heal the soul. A profound, almost reverent silence filled the room. Elena Fuentes, who had expected a very different, far more explosive reaction, seemed momentarily disconcerted, her triumphant smirk faltering. Alexander stood abruptly, his chair scraping loudly against the polished marble floor. If you'll all excuse me, he announced, his voice firm, resolute, I have something far more important to show Miss Hayes. He took Isabella's trembling hand in his grip surprisingly strong, reassuring, and led her out of the stunned, silent dining room, leaving everyone, including a visibly perplexed Elena Fuentes, whose malicious plan had so spectacularly, so unexpectedly, backfired, utterly speechless. Why didn't you tell me who you truly were, Isabella? Alexander asked, his voice a low, gentle murmur, as they walked through a quiet, secluded corridor of the hotel, far from the prying eyes and hushed whispers. Because I'm not that person anymore, Isabella responded, her voice choked with unshed tears. That pianist, that hopeful young woman, she died in that accident, along with my dreams. I'm not so sure about that, he said, stopping in front of a heavy, unmarked oak door. That's why I wanted to show you this. He opened the door, revealing a small, intimate concert hall. Its centerpiece a magnificent Steinway grand piano, its polished ebony surface gleaming under the soft, warm lights. And beside it, looking slightly out of place yet undeniably distinguished, stood a man in his late 50s, his kind eyes filled with a gentle, understanding wisdom. Isabella, Alexander said, his voice soft, I'd like you to meet Dr. Ramirez, a renowned specialist in reconstructive hand surgery and peripheral nerve regeneration. He flew in from Buenos Aires this morning at my request. The room began to spin around Isabella, a dizzying whirlwind of disbelief and a dawning, terrifying hope. What does this mean, Alexander? It means, he said, his gaze intense, unwavering, that I've been searching for the pianist who captivated my mother, who touched her soul with her music, for years. And when I saw you playing in the hotel lobby those late nights, Isabella, when I heard those incomplete, yet breathtakingly beautiful melodies, I knew with an absolute certainty that it was you. Dr. Ramirez believes, he continued, his voice now filled with a quiet, yet powerful conviction, that with an innovative new surgical procedure and intensive, dedicated therapy, you could regain up to 80% of the mobility in your hand. Isabella stared at her injured right hand, her fingers trembling, her mind reeling. The doctors, they said it was impossible. That was 5 years ago, Isabella. Dr. Ramirez interjected, his voice calm, reassuring. Medicine advances rapidly, Miss Hayes. Miracles, as your own story attests, do happen. Why are you doing this, Alexander? She whispered, tears finally, freely streaming down her face. Tears not of sorrow this time, but of a profound, overwhelming gratitude, a fragile, burgeoning hope. Why all of this for me? Because, he responded, his voice thick with an emotion she couldn't quite decipher. I saw how you look at that piano, Isabella, with the same profound, almost desperate longing with which I often look at the world through my camera lens, searching for a beauty, a meaning, that often feels just out of reach. For a fleeting, breathtaking moment, Isabella allowed herself to believe that it was possible, that she could, perhaps, reclaim her music, her passion, her very soul, that she could once again truly play. But then, the crushing weight of reality, of fear, of past disappointments, descended upon her. What if she failed? What if, after all the effort, all the expense, all the rekindled hope, she remained an incomplete pianist, a broken artist, a constant, painful reminder of what she had lost? I can't accept it, she finally said, her voice a choked whisper. It's too much risk, too much money, too much hope. Isabella, please. I'm sorry, Alexander, she interrupted, her voice firm now, resolute, though her heart ached with an almost unbearable pain. Some dreams, some beautiful, impossible dreams, should remain buried in the past, where they belong. That night, Isabella packed her few meager belongings. She couldn't stay at the Blackwood Hotel, not after what had happened, not after Alexander's extraordinary, yet ultimately terrifying, offer. She left the beautiful midnight blue evening gown, a relic of their shared charade, carefully folded on the bed, along with a small, handwritten note. Thank you for rescuing me that snowy night. Thank you for giving me back my dignity. But I can't allow myself to dream again, Alexander. Some miracles, some second chances are not meant to be. I will always remember your kindness. Isabella. She slipped out of the hotel through a discreet side door, disappearing into the vast, indifferent New York City night, leaving behind not just a heartbroken billionaire, but also the haunting, unfinished melody of a love story that had, perhaps, ended before it even truly began. In his opulent office, Alexander found her note hours later, a single tear-stained page. He read it again and again, her words, so filled with a quiet, heartbreaking despair, echoing in his mind, while the incomplete, yet achingly beautiful melodies Isabella had played on the lobby piano seemed to linger in the air, a poignant, unforgettable soundtrack to his own profound, soul-deep solitude. 6 long, arduous months had passed since that fateful night Isabella Hayes vanished from the Blackwood Hotel, leaving Alexander Blackwood adrift in a sea of unspoken regret and haunting, incomplete melodies. Spring had blossomed into a vibrant, almost taunting summer in New York City, its warmth a stark contrast to the persistent, chilling winter that had settled deep within Alexander's soul. He found himself, with increasing, almost obsessive frequency, in his new photography gallery, a space that had once been a little-used, forgotten ballroom in the hotel. It was now filled with dozens of his own stark, evocative black and white photographs. Anonymous, yet deeply human faces, fleeting, everyday city moments, hard-working hands, street artists lost in their craft. All of them, in some subtle, almost imperceptible way, seemed to echo Isabella's quiet strength, her resilient spirit, her profound, unspoken artistry. The gallery, a project born from a desperate need to find meaning, to create beauty amidst the ruins of his own life, was a critical success, yet it offered him little solace. It's impressive, Alexander, what you've achieved in such a short time, Richard Blackwood, his father, commented, surprising his son with an unannounced visit to the gallery one quiet afternoon. Your mother, he added, a rare, almost wistful smile touching his lips, would have been incredibly proud. Alexander turned, genuinely surprised by his father's unexpected compliment, by the uncharacteristic softness in his voice. I thought you believed this was a waste of time, father, a frivolous distraction from the real business of building empires. I did think that, Richard admitted, his gaze lingering on a particularly poignant photograph of a street violinist's weathered hands. Until I finally understood that this is what truly makes you passionate. What makes you alive. Just like the piano, he paused, his voice dropping slightly. Just like the piano was for her. Alexander knew, with a sudden, sharp pang, that his father wasn't referring to his late mother, but to Isabella. Have you heard anything from her, father? Alexander asked, his voice barely a whisper. Richard shook his head, a look of profound sadness in his eyes. Nothing. It's as if she simply vanished into thin air. The sharp click-clack of high heels on the polished gallery floor interrupted their quiet, reflective conversation. Carmen Torres, Alexander's ever-efficient executive assistant, approached, a thick folder clutched in her hand. Mr. Blackwood, excuse the interruption. I have the information you requested. Alexander took the folder and opened it with a surge of nervous anticipation. Inside was a single typewritten address in Oaxaca, Mexico, and a few discreetly taken long-lens photographs. Isabella, her face thinner, her eyes shadowed with a familiar weariness, yet with an undeniable resilient spark, emerging from a small rural schoolhouse, surrounded by a group of laughing, adoring children, their arms laden with makeshift musical instruments. I found her, Alexander murmured, his voice thick with a sudden, overwhelming emotion. She's teaching music. Are you going after her, son? Richard asked, his voice gentle, understanding. Alexander closed the folder, a newfound, unshakable resolve hardening his gaze. I have to try, father. I have to. 2 days later, Alexander found himself driving down a dusty, unpaved road towards the small, remote village where Isabella had, apparently, found a fragile new refuge. The contrast with the glittering, high-stakes world of New York City, with the opulent grandeur of the Blackwood Hotel, was almost jarring. Colorful, hand-painted houses, vibrant, bustling open-air markets, and a profound, almost palpable sense of tranquility that seemed to slow the very passage of time. Following Carmen's meticulously detailed directions, he arrived at a modest, unassuming rural schoolhouse. From his rental car, parked discreetly under the shade of a sprawling, ancient tree, he could see Isabella, seated on a simple wooden stool under a vibrant, bougainvillea-covered archway, surrounded by a group of eager, bright-eyed children. Her left hand, nimble and sure, danced across the strings of a small, battered guitar, while the children, with a joyous, uninhibited enthusiasm, attempted to follow the rhythm with a collection of diverse, handmade instruments, tin cans, wooden flutes, gourds filled with dried beans. Seeing her like this, so radiant, so alive, so utterly, completely in her element, smiling freely under the warm Oaxacan sun, made Alexander's heart ache with a profound, almost unbearable longing. He had been about to start the car, to turn back, to respect her choice, her new life, when one of the children, a small boy with mischievous dark eyes, pointed directly at him. Isabella looked up, her eyes, those unforgettable, soulful eyes, meeting his across the dusty, sun-drenched schoolyard. The surprise on her face was instantly, undeniably followed by something else, something deeper, something Alexander, in his wildest, most desperate dreams, hadn't dared to hope for. He got out of the car and walked towards her, his heart pounding, feeling as if every single step was bringing him closer to an unknown, terrifying, yet breathtakingly beautiful precipice. "Hello, Isabella?" Alexander Blackwood said simply, his voice a low, hesitant murmur as he stood before her in the dusty, sun-drenched Oaxacan schoolyard. "How did you find me?" Isabella Hayes asked, her voice barely a whisper, as the curious, bright-eyed children slowly, reluctantly, dispersed, called away by another teacher. "Carmen, my assistant. She has contacts everywhere." A small, almost shy girl with enormous dark eyes lingered, tugging at Isabella's skirt. "Maestra, who is the handsome man?" she whispered, her voice filled with a child's innocent curiosity. Isabella smiled, a genuine, unforced expression that made Alexander's heart ache. Children, go with Maestro Rosario. We'll continue our music lesson tomorrow. The children finally, reluctantly, scattered, their joyous laughter echoing in the warm afternoon air, leaving Alexander and Isabella alone under the shade of the ancient, sprawling tree. You look well, Isabella, Alexander commented, his gaze sweeping over her, taking in the subtle changes. She was still slender, yes, but no longer possessed that fragile, almost ethereal quality that had once characterized her. There was a new strength in her eyes, a quiet, resilient peace in her demeanor. This place, it suits you. What do you want, Alexander? She asked, her voice still soft, but with an underlying edge of weariness, of caution. I wanted to see you, he replied, his voice raw with an honesty that surprised even himself. To know that you were all right. I'm fine, she stated, her gaze unwavering. As you can see, I found my place. Teaching music with one hand, she added, a hint of her old, bitter irony returning, is apparently all I'm good for now. You could offer so much more, Isabella. Alexander, we've already talked about this. The surgery, the foundation, the life you envisioned for me. It's not my life. Not anymore. No, he pressed, stepping closer, his voice urgent. You talked. I listened. Now it's my turn. He took a deep, steadying breath. I've created a foundation, Isabella, in your name, for artists with injuries, with illnesses, with anything that prevents them from pursuing their art. We offer scholarships for treatments, for rehabilitation, for adapted equipment. Isabella stared at him, stunned, speechless, her eyes wide with disbelief. A foundation? In 6 months. My father was right about one thing, Isabella. Alexander offered a rare, self-deprecating smile. Blackwoods know how to build. Quickly. Effectively. He paused, his gaze intense, unwavering. The foundation already has 10 beneficiaries. One of them is a brilliant young pianist with severe arthritis who now uses a specially designed device to continue playing, to continue creating. And you searched for me to offer me a scholarship, Alexander? She asked, her voice a mixture of disbelief and a dawning, reluctant hope. No, he confessed, his voice dropping to a low, intimate murmur. I searched for you because I haven't stopped thinking about you. Not for a single day, not for a single moment, since you walked out of that hotel, out of my life. He stepped even closer, his green eyes, usually so cool and assessing, now blazing with a fierce, undeniable emotion. The foundation was inspired by you, Isabella, yes. By your courage, your resilience, your extraordinary talent. But my visit here, my being here now, it's purely selfish. It's for me. Isabella looked away, her heart pounding, her mind a chaotic whirlwind of conflicting emotions. I'm not the same person you knew in New York, Alexander. I know, he responded, his voice gentle, understanding. And neither am I. He gestured towards his camera, which lay on a nearby dusty bench. I left the management of the hotel in Elena Fuentes's capable hands. My father, surprisingly, approved. Now, I travel the country, photographing artists who have overcome obstacles, who have transformed their pain into breathtaking beauty. I'm building something significant, Isabella, something that truly, profoundly matters to me. I'm glad for you, Alexander, she said, her voice sincere, though a pang of something akin to regret, to longing, tightened in her chest. But something's missing, he continued, his gaze searching hers. Or rather, someone. Isabella rose, suddenly, inexplicably uncomfortable, needing to move to put distance between them. Alexander, I have a life here now. A good life. A simple life. I can't just abandon it. I'm not asking you to abandon anything, Isabella, he insisted, his voice urgent. I'm asking you to consider coming back to New York. Not to the hotel, not for me, not entirely. But for yourself. For your music. He pulled a thick, official-looking folder from his worn leather satchel. Dr. Anya Sharma, our new medical director at the foundation, a brilliant surgeon I brought over from Buenos Aires. She believes you're a perfect candidate for the program. She believes there's still hope for your hand. Dr. Sharma? Not Dr. Ramirez. Isabella asked, a flicker of her old, sharp intellect returning. She joined us 3 months ago. She's the best in her field, Isabella. And she's reviewed your entire medical file. He handed her the folder. Here's all the information. The decision, as always, is yours. Utterly, completely yours. Isabella took the folder with a trembling hand. I can't promise anything, Alexander. I'm not asking for promises, Isabella, he replied, his voice soft, almost a whisper. I'm just asking you to think about it, to consider the possibility. As they walked towards Alexander's rental car, the setting Oaxacan sun painting the sky in breathtaking hues of orange and rose, bathing Isabella's face in a warm, golden light, he told her about the changes at the hotel, about Elena Fuentes now confidently at the helm, about his father's surprising transformation since he started the foundation, opening a music room in the hotel in memory of his late wife, Margarita. It seems my departure was the best thing that could have happened to everyone, Isabella commented, a sad, wistful smile on her lips. Not for everyone, Alexander responded, his voice low, intense. But I understand why you left. The fear of dreaming again, of hoping again, can be far more paralyzing, far more terrifying, than any physical injury, any lost career. They stopped beside his car, the silence between them charged with unspoken emotions, with unfulfilled longings. Will you stay tonight? She asked suddenly, surprising even herself with the impulsive, heartfelt question. Do you want me to stay? There was so much to talk about, so many unspoken truths, so many unanswered questions. And it had been so long, so very long, since she had heard any news from the city, from the life she had so abruptly, so painfully left behind. Alexander smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached his eyes, transforming his usually serious, guarded features. Then I'll stay, he said, his voice gentle, his gaze tender. That night, in the small, humble adobe house Isabella shared with another village teacher, they talked for hours, their voices a low, intimate murmur under the vast, starlit Oaxacan sky. They talked about music, about photography, about broken dreams and new, fragile hopes. And when it was finally time for Alexander to leave the next day, Isabella didn't say she would return to New York. Not yet. But she also, significantly, didn't say she wouldn't. On the long, solitary drive back to the city, Alexander felt a strange, unfamiliar mixture of profound sadness and a burgeoning, almost reckless hope. He had found Isabella. He had seen her smile. He had spoken with her, truly spoken with her, for the first time. But he was, once again, returning alone. Some miracles, he told himself, his hands gripping the steering wheel, the endless highway stretching out before him, a metaphor for the uncertain, yet undeniably alluring path ahead. Some miracles, the ones that truly matter, simply need more time, more faith. What if the courage to embrace a terrifying hope, to take a leap of faith into an unknown future, led you back to a place filled with painful memories, yet also, unexpectedly, with the promise of a love that refused to be silenced? Could a broken melody, a shattered dream, truly find its way back to a breathtaking, harmonious crescendo? The official-looking envelope arrived at Alexander Blackwood's New York City office on a crisp Tuesday morning. It bore no return address, only his name, written in a graceful, instantly recognizable calligraphy that made his heart skip a beat. When did this arrive? He asked his assistant, Carmen Torres, his voice betraying none of the turmoil raging within him. It was delivered by special courier just an hour ago, sir, Carmen replied, her own curiosity piqued by her boss's unusual reaction. With trembling hands, Alexander opened the envelope. Inside, a single sheet of high-quality stationery held only a few, yet profoundly significant, words. I'll try. Arriving Friday. Isabella. 3 long, agonizing months had passed since his visit to Oaxaca. 3 months of deafening silence, of unanswered calls, of unacknowledged messages. Alexander had respected her space, her need for time, trusting with a desperate, unwavering faith that Isabella would make the decision that was right for her, whatever that might be. Good news, Alexander? Elena Fuentes, his business partner and now a close, trusted friend, asked, entering his office with her usual brisk, no-nonsense elegance. Isabella is coming back, he responded, a slow, incredulous smile spreading across his face, a smile Elena hadn't seen in months. Elena nodded slowly, a knowing warmth in her eyes. It was about time. Dr. Solis has been asking about her. She's very optimistic about the new surgical procedure. Alexander looked at Elena, a genuine surprise in his own eyes. I thought you'd be happy if she never returned. People change, Alexander, Elena replied, a soft, genuine smile on her lips. Even I, and frankly, she added, a mischievous twinkle in her eyes. This hotel has been far too dull without a resident musical prodigy and a lovesick CEO moping around. It was true. In the past few months, Elena had proven to be an exceptional director for the Blackwood Hotel, making decisions Alexander himself would never have considered. Her sharp intellect and surprising compassion transforming the once stuffy establishment into a vibrant, thriving hub of culture and hospitality. Prepare Suite 512 for her, Elena offered, her voice practical but kind. The one overlooking the park. With the Steinway. Thank you, Elena, Alexander responded, his voice thick with a gratitude that went far beyond professional courtesy. But I don't think she'll be staying here. Why not? Too many memories, he replied, his gaze distant. And in Buenos Aires, he continued, referring to Isabella's upcoming surgery with the renowned Dr. Solis. Isabella will be undergoing intensive preoperative tests and therapies. She'll need a quiet, private space to recover, to prepare. He paused, then added, a new, determined resolve in his voice. I'm taking her to my family's old summer estate in the Hamptons. It's been empty for years, but it's peaceful there, serene. In Buenos Aires, Isabella breathed deeply as Dr. Solis meticulously examined her injured right hand. 2 intense months had passed, filled with grueling preliminary tests, painful physical therapies, and a constant, internal battle between hope and a lingering, familiar despair. You're responding very well to the preliminary exercises, Isabella, Dr. Solis commented, her voice calm, reassuring. I have great hopes for you, for this surgery. Do you really think I'll be able to play like before, doctor? Isabella asked, her voice barely a whisper, the question a fragile, almost unbearable weight on her heart. Dr. Solis looked at her directly, her gaze honest, unwavering. No, you won't play like before, Isabella. Isabella felt her heart sink, a cold wave of disappointment washing over her. You'll play differently, Dr. Solis continued, a gentle, knowing smile on her lips, perhaps with more feeling, more depth, more soul. Physical limitations, my dear, often open new, unexpected artistic doors you never even knew existed. Isabella looked out the hospital window. Buenos Aires, a vibrant, unfamiliar city, stretched out before her, a symbol of her terrifying, yet exhilarating, leap of faith. Do you know why I finally accepted Alexander's offer, doctor? Isabella asked, her voice soft, contemplative. Why I agreed to this terrifying surgery. Tell me, Dr. Solis encouraged, her eyes kind. A little girl in my music class in Oaxaca, Marisol. She was born without her left hand. When I told her I couldn't play the piano well anymore because of my injured right hand, she looked at me with her big, innocent eyes and said, Then we're perfect together, maestra. You can play the left-hand part, and I'll play the right. Isabella smiled, a genuine, unforced expression, the memory a warm, comforting embrace. It was the first time in years, doctor, that a piece of music sounded complete to me. Whole. Dr. Solis smiled, a deep understanding in her eyes. That little girl gave you a great lesson, Isabella. a profound gift. That's why I asked Alexander to offer her a scholarship too, Isabella continued, her voice gaining strength. So they can design a special prosthetic for her, one that will allow her to play, to create, to express the beautiful music I know is already in her heart. And he's doing it, doctor. He's actually doing it. Marisol will be arriving next month to begin her own treatment, her own journey. Isabella felt a surge of satisfaction, a quiet, profound joy. At least something truly, undeniably good would come out of all this, even if her own surgery, her own dream, didn't succeed. Meanwhile, in New York City, Alexander was transforming his late father's imposing, seldom-used office at Blackwood Industries into the vibrant headquarters for the Herrera Blackwood Foundation for Artists. Richard Blackwood, his father, surprisingly, had not only approved the ambitious project but had become actively, enthusiastically involved, leveraging his extensive network of contacts and resources. "Have you spoken with her?" Richard asked, as they reviewed blueprints for a new wing of the hotel, a wing that would be entirely dedicated to the foundation, a space for artists to create, to heal, to thrive. "I only received a note confirming she's arriving on Friday for the anniversary concert," Alexander replied, his voice a mixture of excitement and a lingering, familiar apprehension. "Do you know how the surgery went?" Alexander shook his head, a knot of anxiety tightening in his chest. "Carmen, my assistant, spoke with Dr. Solis. She said everything went according to plan, but that it's too soon to know the definitive results. That Isabella needs time to heal, to recover, both physically and emotionally." Richard placed a reassuring hand on his son's shoulder. "Your mother would be proud of you, Alexander, not just for the foundation but for finding your own way, for choosing love." At that moment, Carmen entered hurriedly, her face pale. "Alexander, I just received a message from Dr. Solis. Isabella. She left Buenos Aires earlier than expected. She's arriving tomorrow, not Friday." "Tomorrow?" Alexander exclaimed, his heart pounding. "But we haven't finished the preparations for the anniversary concert. The hotel, the music room." "That's another matter," Carmen interrupted, a mischievous glint in her eyes. "Isabella doesn't want you to know she's arriving tomorrow. She wanted to surprise you at the concert." Alexander looked at his father, then at Carmen, utterly confused. "What are you talking about?" Carmen smiled, a genuine, knowing smile. "Dr. Solis says Isabella has been practicing a very special piece of music. She wants to play it at the 50th anniversary concert. For you. She can play again?" Alexander whispered, his voice thick with a disbelief that was slowly, miraculously, transforming into an overwhelming, breathtaking hope. "That," Carmen responded, her eyes twinkling with a secret, shared joy. "You'll have to see for yourself, Alexander." The day of the concert, the Blackwood Hotel buzzed with an electric, palpable activity. It was the 0th anniversary of the iconic New York City landmark, and the city's entire high society, its cultural elite, its most influential figures, were present. The grand ballroom had been transformed into an elegant, intimate concert hall. Its centerpiece the magnificent, gleaming Steinway grand piano, the very same instrument that had once witnessed Isabella Hayes's youthful brilliance, and later, her silent, heartbreaking despair. Alexander Blackwood nervously scanned the arriving guests, his heart pounding with a mixture of agonizing anticipation and a desperate, fragile hope, searching for Isabella's face in the glittering crowd. But as the distinguished guests took their seats and the renowned conductor ascended the stage, a cold wave of disappointment, of fear, began to wash over him. Perhaps she wouldn't come. Perhaps it was all too much, too soon. "Welcome to the 50th anniversary commemorative concert of the Blackwood Hotel," the conductor began, his voice warm, resonant. "Tonight, we have the distinct honor of presenting a very special artist." Alexander stopped listening. His gaze was fixed on the main entrance. And then, just as the conductor was about to announce the evening's performer, he saw her. Elena Fuentes, his business partner, discreetly accompanying a woman towards a secluded side entrance. "Isabella." dressed in an elegant, emerald green gown that made her eyes sparkle. Her golden brown hair, longer now, styled and soft, cascading waves, she walked with a quiet, newfound confidence, her head held high. She looked different, stronger, more serene, more beautiful than he had ever remembered. Before Alexander could even begin to approach her, before he could even process the overwhelming wave of emotion that threatened to consume him, the conductor announced, his voice filled with a dramatic flourish, "Ladies and gentlemen, after a 6-year absence from the stage, please welcome back the extraordinary, the incomparable pianist, Isabella Hayes." A shocked murmur rippled through the stunned audience as Isabella gracefully walked towards the piano. Alexander, motionless in his seat beside his father, felt his heart stop, then begin to pound with a fierce, almost painful intensity. Isabella sat before the piano, adjusted the bench and gently, almost reverently, placed her hands on the cool ivory keys. She closed her eyes for a long moment, as if gathering her strength, her courage. Then she began to play. The first notes were tentative, soft, almost hesitant, played primarily with her left hand, her uninjured hand. But gradually, miraculously, her right hand began to join in, creating harmonies that grew increasingly complex, increasingly beautiful, increasingly whole. The melody was the same one Alexander had heard her play, incomplete and heartbreaking, during those long solitary nights in the deserted hotel lobby. But now, it was complete, vibrant, soaring, filled with an emotion so profound, so raw, it brought tears to his eyes. "It's the piece she played for your mother?" Richard Blackwood whispered, his own eyes glistening with unshed tears, his voice thick with emotion. The music filled the grand ballroom, telling a story of profound loss, of unbearable pain, and finally, of breathtaking, triumphant redemption. Each note seemed a word in a universal language that everyone in that room could understand, yet no one could possibly articulate. When Isabella finished, a moment of absolute, profound silence hung in the air, heavy with unspoken emotion, before the entire room erupted in a thunderous, sustained applause. Alexander was on his feet, his own applause deafening, his heart overflowing with an emotion so powerful, so overwhelming, it threatened to consume him. Isabella rose, made a graceful, heartfelt bow, and then, her voice clear and strong, spoke into the microphone for the very first time. "This piece," she began, her gaze sweeping across the captivated audience, "is called Unspoken. I composed it many years ago, but it was never truly complete. Not until now." The silence that followed her words was almost tangible, a shared, collective breath held in anticipation. Gabriel, still standing amidst the applauding crowd, felt his entire world, his entire being, shift, realign. "This piece," Isabella continued, her voice now filled with a quiet, unwavering confidence. "I composed it thinking of someone who inspired me many years ago, someone whose belief in me, in my music, never wavered. And by a strange, almost fated coincidence, destiny led me to play it, for the very first time, here on this very same piano, for Margarita Blackwood, Alexander's late mother." Murmurs of surprise, of dawning understanding, rippled through the room. Richard Blackwood straightened in his seat, his eyes fixed on the extraordinary woman who had, all those years ago, so profoundly captivated his beloved wife. "But today," Isabella continued, her voice gaining a new, vibrant strength, her gaze finally, irrevocably, finding Alexander's in the crowd. "This piece has a completely new, a far more profound meaning. Today, I play it for someone who found me in my darkest, most desolate moment, and without a single word, without a single expectation, simply offered me his hand, his heart, his unwavering, unconditional support. Her voice trembled slightly, a single tear tracing a shimmering path down her cheek. "When I had lost all hope, all faith in myself, in life, in love," her eyes, shining with unshed tears, locked with Alexander's. "A year ago," she said, her voice now a soft, intimate whisper that seemed to resonate only between them. "During an impossible, almost apocalyptic snowstorm in this very city. I was sitting alone on a cold, deserted street, freezing, weeping, with nothing left but the tattered dress I was wearing. And then, she paused, a radiant, breathtaking smile illuminating her face. A man, a kind, compassionate stranger, approached me. He didn't say a word. He simply offered me his hand, his warmth, his unexpected, life-altering kindness. Her eyes, now filled with an undeniable, profound love, never left Alexander's. That night, she continued, her voice gaining a new, joyful resonance, began my long, arduous journey back, not just to music but to life, to love. And although my hand, my dream, will never be the same, my heart. She placed her uninjured left hand over her own heart. My heart is stronger now, more complete, more alive than it has ever been before. Alexander, without thinking, without hesitating, moved through the astonished, parting crowd, his gaze fixed solely on Isabella until he reached the stage. He ascended the steps slowly, deliberately, as if each movement, each breath, could shatter the fragile, magical spell that enveloped them. "Isabella," he whispered when he finally stood before her, his voice thick with an emotion too profound for words. "Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I needed to do this for myself," she responded, her voice soft yet firm. "I needed to know I could play again. Not for you, Alexander. Not for anyone else. But for me. For my own soul." Elena Fuentes, Alexander's business partner, approached the microphone then, her usual composed demeanor softened by a genuine, heartfelt emotion. "I believe this is the perfect moment," she announced, her voice ringing with a quiet triumph, "to officially inaugurate the Margarita Blackwood Wing, a new section of this hotel dedicated entirely to the Herrera Blackwood Foundation for Artists. A place," she continued, her gaze sweeping across the room, lingering for a moment on Isabella and Alexander, "where art can heal, where music can speak when words fail, where dreams, no matter how broken, can find a way to take flight again." The audience applauded enthusiastically as a curtain on the left side of the ballroom opened, revealing the elegant entrance to the new wing. Above it, a beautifully crafted sign read, "Where art heals and music speaks when words are not enough." "This foundation," Elena continued, her voice filled with a quiet pride, "was born from an idea Alexander had after meeting Isabella. And though I am ashamed to admit it now," she paused, her gaze meeting Isabella's with a new, profound respect. "At first, I was one of its biggest opponents. I was wrong. So very wrong." Elena looked at Isabella, a genuine, heartfelt smile on her lips. "Sometimes," she added, her voice a soft, almost humble whisper, "we need to lose something or someone to truly understand their immeasurable value. I lost a friendship because of my own foolish jealousy, my own petty pride. But I hope," she said, her gaze now fixed on Alexander, "I hope I have gained two new, far more valuable friends in the process." Richard Blackwood, Alexander's father, rose from his seat and slowly, with a newfound, almost uncharacteristic humility, ascended the stage. For the first time in years, he smiled, a genuine, unburdened smile that reached his usually cold, assessing eyes. "My wife," he said, taking the microphone, his voice thick with emotion, "always said that music could heal any wound. I never truly believed her. Until now." He paused, his gaze sweeping across the room, then settling on Isabella and Alexander, who stood hand in hand, their faces alight with a quiet, radiant joy. "Tonight," Richard Blackwood declared, his voice ringing with a newfound, heartfelt conviction, "we don't just celebrate 50 years of the Blackwood Hotel. We celebrate a new beginning, a new purpose for this place, a new hope." He turned to his son, then to Isabella. "From today forward, 10% of the hotel's profits will be permanently dedicated to the foundation. And I would like to ask both of you," he said, his voice filled with a surprising, almost paternal tenderness, "to lead it, together." Alexander looked at his father, then at Isabella, who seemed as stunned, as overwhelmed as he felt. Together, Gabriel whispered, his voice barely audible. If she accepts, Richard responded with a knowing smile, his gaze fixed on Isabella. All eyes in the room turned towards her. She looked at her hands, then at the magnificent Steinway piano, and finally at Alexander, her heart overflowing with an emotion too profound for words. There's something I haven't told you, she said, her voice a little shaky. My recovery, it's not complete. It never will be. I can play better now, yes, much better. But my right hand, she held it up, the faint scars a silent testament to her long, arduous journey, will always have limitations. I don't need you to be perfect, Isabella, Alexander said, taking her hand, his touch gentle, reassuring. I just need you to be you. Isabella smiled then, a radiant, breathtaking smile, through her tears. Then I accept, she whispered, her voice filled with a quiet, unshakable joy. The applause erupted again, thunderous, sustained, a symphony of heartfelt approval. Elena Fuentes and Richard Blackwood discreetly retreated, leaving Alexander and Isabella alone in the center of the stage, bathed in the warm, golden glow of the spotlights, while the distinguished guests began to move towards the newly inaugurated Margarita Blackwood wing, their hushed whispers filled with awe and admiration. When did you know? Isabella asked, her voice a soft murmur against Alexander's chest as they stood, embraced, in the now empty ballroom, the lingering scent of white flowers and expensive champagne a fragrant reminder of the magical night. When did you know I was the pianist your mother had heard all those years ago? I think, Alexander responded, his voice equally soft, his arms tightening around her. I always knew, Isabella, from that very first night, when I saw you looking at this piano with such profound longing. But I wasn't sure, not completely, until Elena showed me those old photographs, those articles about your past. And you still helped me? She asked, her voice filled with a quiet wonder. Even when you thought I had hidden the truth from you? Alexander gently tilted her chin up, his gaze tender, adoring. I helped you, Isabella, he whispered, because I saw your soul in your music. Incomplete, yes. Wounded, undeniably, but so incredibly, breathtakingly beautiful. Just like mine. He paused, then added, his voice thick with emotion. Do you know what unspoken means, Isabella? Tell me, she urged, her eyes searching his. There are moments in life, Isabella, he began, his voice a low, intimate murmur. Moments so powerful, so profound, that mere words cannot possibly capture them. Like when someone, a complete stranger, extends their hand to you in the middle of an impossible, life-shattering storm. Or when, after years of suffocating darkness, you finally, miraculously, see the light again. Alexander smiled, a tender, loving smile that reached the deepest corners of her soul. Or like this. And without any more words, he kissed her softly, gently. A kiss that sealed a promise that had begun, so improbably, on a cold, snowy New York City night. A promise of a love story that was, finally, breathtakingly, beautifully, complete. Outside, as if by some unseen, benevolent magic, tiny, delicate snowflakes began to fall again, blanketing the bustling city in a soft, pristine white shroud, as if the sky itself wanted to remind everyone of where and how their extraordinary, improbable, yet undeniably fated love story had so miraculously, so beautifully begun. On the magnificent Steinway grand piano, the musical score for Unspoken lay open, its intricate notes a silent, eloquent testament, complete at last, just like the extraordinary, inspiring story that had now, finally, joyfully, begun for Alexander Blackwood and Isabella Hayes. 3 years had passed since that magical, transformative night at the Blackwood Hotel. The Herrera Blackwood Foundation for Artists had become an international benchmark, a beacon of hope and opportunity for artists with diverse disabilities, its innovative programs changing lives across North and South America. In the sun-drenched garden of the hotel, now a vibrant, welcoming public space, meticulously redesigned by Isabella herself, a special celebration was underway, the third annual gala of the foundation. The air, once thick with the hushed whispers of corporate intrigue, now resonated with the joyful sounds of children's laughter, the vibrant melodies of aspiring musicians, the heartfelt testimonials of artists whose lives had been profoundly, irrevocably changed. Photographs taken by Alexander, now an internationally recognized photographer whose work often graced the covers of prestigious art magazines, adorned the hallways, telling powerful, poignant stories of resilience, of courage, of the indomitable human spirit, through his unique, compassionate lens. In the center of the garden, a specially designed, accessible stage welcomed a diverse array of talented artists who had been beneficiaries of the foundation's unwavering support. Maestra Isabella, look! A young, radiant teenager exclaimed, proudly showing Isabella how effortlessly, how gracefully, she now moved her prosthetic fingers across the keys of a small, portable keyboard. It was Marisol, the little girl from Oaxaca whose innocent courage had so profoundly inspired Isabella. She was no longer the timid, shy child of 3 years ago, but a confident, accomplished young woman who had just performed her own original, breathtaking composition before hundreds of captivated, adoring guests. "Do you know," Marisol said, her dark eyes shining with an unshakable gratitude, "that because of you, because of the foundation, I'm here today? Because of your story, Maestra?" "No, Marisol," Isabella responded, gently adjusting a stray lock of the girl's dark hair, her own eyes glistening with unshed tears. "It's because you taught me that we don't need to be perfect to create something truly, profoundly beautiful." Across the garden, Alexander conversed animatedly with Carmen Torres, who now expertly, passionately directed the Foundation's scholarship program. Her tireless work identifying and nurturing talent in marginalized, underserved communities had multiplied the project's impact tenfold, reaching artists who had once only dared to dream of such opportunities. "The new center in Chiapas is almost ready, Alexander," Carmen commented, showing him photographs on her tablet. "We'll have capacity for 30 more students next semester, thanks to your latest anonymous donation." Alexander nodded, a quiet satisfaction in his eyes, though his attention, as always, was subtly, yet undeniably, divided. He couldn't stop his gaze from drifting towards Isabella, radiant in an elegant blue gown that accentuated her subtle, 5-month baby bump, as she interacted so naturally, so gracefully, with the young musicians, her presence a beacon of warmth, of inspiration, of unwavering hope. "Go to her," Carmen said, a knowing, complicit smile on her lips. "I'll handle the boring details." Alexander navigated through the joyful, bustling crowd, greeting guests, his heart filled with a profound, almost overwhelming gratitude. Among them, he distinguished Elena Fuentes, who now successfully directed her own boutique hotel consulting firm, having left the Blackwood Hotel in the capable hands of a professional administrator. Her friendship with Alexander and Isabella a testament to the transformative power of forgiveness and shared understanding. "Nervous, Alexander?" Elena teased as he passed by, a playful glint in her eyes. "Terrified," he confessed with a genuine, unburdened smile. A few feet away, Richard Blackwood, Alexander's father, held a giggling, nearly 2-year-old boy in his arms, the son of one of the Foundation's scholarship recipients. The little boy seemingly fascinated by the old man's impressive silver tie. The change in Richard was perhaps the most surprising, most profound of all. The once cold, distant, almost ruthless patriarch had transformed into a doting, beloved honorary grandfather to all the children in the program. His gruff exterior softened by a newfound, unexpected tenderness. "Isabella," Alexander finally reached her side, his voice a low, intimate murmur. "Marisol wants to play a duet with you at the next gala. She says she'd like to combine music and photography in a special presentation." "I'd love to," Isabella responded, taking his hand, her eyes shining with love. "But first," she added, her voice dropping to a conspiratorial whisper, "can we sneak away for a moment? There's something I want to show you." Intrigued, Isabella followed him through the bustling hotel, their hands clasped tightly, until they reached the main entrance. Outside, To her utter astonishment, a sleek, black limousine waited. "Where are we going?" she asked, her heart pounding with a sudden joyful anticipation. "Not far," he replied, a mysterious smile playing on his lips. 20 minutes later, the limousine pulled up in front of a familiar, yet now strangely transformed, bus stop, the very same bus stop where Alexander had found her, so lost, so broken, on that fateful, snowy New York City night 3 long years ago. But now it looked different. A small, elegant bronze monument, a sculpture of 2 intertwined hands, stood where she had once huddled in despair, and a simple, yet profoundly moving plaque read, "Where words fail, music begins." "What is this, Alexander?" Isabella whispered, her voice thick with emotion, tears streaming down her face. "The first point on the new urban art route the foundation is creating throughout the city," he explained, his own eyes glistening. "But for me, Isabella," he continued, his voice raw with a love that transcended words, "it's much more than that. It's where our everything truly began." From his coat pocket, Alexander pulled out a small, velvet-covered box. "3 years ago," he said, his voice trembling slightly as he opened the box to reveal a simple, yet breathtakingly beautiful ring. A single, flawless sapphire nestled amidst a delicate filigree of tiny, ethically sourced diamonds, its design a sweet echo of a musical note. "We made each other a silent promise, a promise without words. Today," he paused, his gaze intense, unwavering, "I want to make you a promise with them. I love you, Isabella Hayes. Will you marry me? Again, this time for real? For always?" Tears clouded Isabella's vision as she nodded, her voice a choked whisper. "Yes, Alexander. 1,000 times, yes." As Alexander slipped the ring onto her finger, the first delicate snowflakes of winter began to fall, as if by some unseen, benevolent magic, a gentle, ethereal echo of that first, fateful, life-altering encounter. "It seems," Alexander murmured, pulling her into a fierce, tender embrace, "that the snow, our snow, follows us, my love. It's a reminder," Isabella responded, her voice filled with a profound, unshakable certainty, as she kissed him. A deep, soul-searing kiss that tasted of tears, of joy, of a love that had, against all odds, not only survived, but blossomed into something truly, breathtakingly extraordinary. A reminder that sometimes, when everything seems cold and dark and utterly, completely hopeless, a single, outstretched hand, a single, compassionate heart, can change an entire life, an entire world. Back at the hotel, the gala continued, a vibrant symphony of hope and celebration. Isabella sat before the magnificent Steinway grand piano, the very same instrument that had witnessed her entire, tumultuous journey, and with Alexander by her side, his camera capturing every precious, fleeting moment, she began to play a new composition, a melody born not from sorrow, but from an overflowing, immeasurable joy. Her hands, one completely healed, the other still bearing the faint, almost invisible scars of her past, yet now imbued with a newfound strength, a resilient grace, moved together, creating a breathtaking, harmonious symphony, a testament to a love that was, in every sense of the word, truly, beautifully, imperfectly perfect. The final note resonated in the grand ballroom as Alexander captured the last, unforgettable image. Isabella's hands on the ivory keys, her wedding ring sparkling softly under the warm, golden lights, telling a story, their story, a story that had begun with her, a broken pianist, weeping, freezing, alone on a desolate city street, until a reclusive, enigmatic billionaire approached her, without a single word, and changed her destiny, their destiny, forever. This powerful, deeply moving story of Isabella and Alexander reminds us that even in the midst of our darkest, most desolate winters, hope can, and often does, bloom in the most unexpected, most miraculous of ways. It teaches us that true love isn't about perfection, but about courage, about resilience, about the unwavering willingness to extend a hand, to open a heart, even when the world around us feels cold and dark and utterly completely hopeless. If their extraordinary journey, from a chance encounter on a snowy night to a love story written in the stars, touched your heart, if you believe in the transformative power of second chances and the enduring strength of the human spirit to overcome adversity, don't forget to like this video, share it with someone who needs a potent dose of inspiration and hope today, and comment below with your favorite, most moving moment from their incredible, life-altering love story. What part of their journey resonated most deeply with you? And of course, subscribe to our channel for more heartwarming, soul-stirring tales that celebrate the resilience of the human heart, the beauty of unexpected connections, and the transformative, almost mystical power of a love that was, quite simply, always meant to be. We'd also love to know, where are you watching this inspiring love story from today? Your voices, your unique experiences, your shared hopes, enrich our global community immeasurably. Let's keep believing in the magic of love, one extraordinary, unforgettable story at a time.